had developed a reputation for himself as having these apoplectic dreams about what God expected of the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob before they were known as that. He'd already lied to the Pharaoh about his wife being his sister. In fact, he'd done it a couple of times. He was so afraid. And she went along with him because she knew, after years of struggling with Abraham, that he had these very solid ideas about God's expectations. So that when God asked Abraham to make a sacrifice, he was willing to sacrifice everybody and everything else except for himself. But Sarah, wanting to keep peace in the house, especially as their family and their tent grew, decided to accommodate Abraham. So that on this morning, when Abraham rolls over in their bed early one morning and he says, "I had this dream," she's already nodding in her heart and saying, "Here we go again." But this time when he turns over, it's dangerous. He says, "I had a dream that God told me, that is us, to sacrifice our son." And she thought, well, okay, we're going to dedicate him to the Lord. And, you know, he's our son, and we want him to follow in the tradition that we've inherited from the prophetic. So, okay, good. But then Abraham goes a step further, and he says, "No, I mean sacrifice." Now, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to name what I think Sarah might have said there in their bed that morning when she heard Abram's plans for Isaac, their son. But you can imagine it was not a pretty picture. She was pretty upset with the idea that Abram was going to do this, and yet she knew that because Abraham was looked to by the people, the emerging nascent gathering of people soon to be known as Israel, that she needed to back off. So she heard his plans. She listened them all the way out. She got down to the final details of what Abraham was thinking of doing that morning. And she said, "Well, let me help you get ready." And she got him dressed, and she got everything prepared, and she put the saddles and the baggage and the side bags on the camels and the mules, and she sent them packing. And as soon as they left, she rushed around, she gathered up a male goat, and she hurried with two of her servants, and they went around the other side of Mount Meribah. And Abraham and all of his followers were making this very formal procession with the banners flying, and "Thus saith the Lord," and "This is God's intention for us." And meanwhile, Sarah's rushing around the other side, making double time up into the thick, thick bramble bushes that surround this place she knew Abram was headed toward. And so while Abram's doing worship and worshiping a God that would sacrifice their only son, and Isaac's over there in the bushes around the other side with a couple of servants keeping track of him, she's around in the bushes clearing a path, and she's got a muzzle on this ram, and she's quietly sneaking up with two of her female servants, and they clear a little opening, and they wait until that moment that we've recorded as the moment when God speaks. And as they remember it, God says, "This is the time here." So they bind Isaac, and her heart is pounding, and she's terrified that he might make a misstep, this crazy, sneaky, really confused husband of hers. And at the right moment, she makes a noise in the bushes, and she tears the muzzle off the ram, and the ram, just overjoyed to be free, makes this bleeding sound and dives right into the bushes. And Abraham looks up and says, "Thanks be to God." When in reality he needed to say, because he'd been dreading this moment and hoping, "Oh God, somebody rescue me from this image of God," he should have said, "Thanks be to Sarah who pulled me out of it one more time." It's a crazy passage to reflect on here on a Sunday morning here at Kenyon College. And yet, there is this really distinctive call of the Spirit for more and more of us to be the Sarahs in a world that really misunderstands God's call